Sure.
There we go. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Madaket Area Plan Workgroup meeting. I'm Bruce Mandel, chairperson of the work group, and I am calling this meeting to order. And I'm now going to read a roll call and just make your presence known so we can get an official count for the quorum. Just answer aye or yes or whatever. Ethan Devine, not present. Tom Erickson, not yet present. Leslie Forbes,
Here.
thank you. Peter Haffenreffer,
Here.
thank you. JP
Here.
Hernandez,
Present.
thank you. David Madigan's already told me he can't make it. Bruce Mandela's here. Michael Maynard,
Here.
thank you. Lars Soderberg,
Here.
thank you. Joseph Topham,
Here.
thank you. Jess Bell, no. Kitty Parkman,
Here.
thank you. Well, that establishes a quorum. I now have the honor of reading the remotely conducted meeting script. This open meeting of the Madaket Area Plan Work Group is being conducted remotely in a Zoom format in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. The recording of the meeting will be available for viewing on the town's YouTube channel. This meeting is also being transcribed using the town's AI companion. Minutes will be prepared, and all attendees are participating in this as a video conference. I've already conducted a roll call and established a quorum. All Zoom participants are asked to mute their devices unless they're addressing the committee. Regarding public comment, a member of the public is attending the meeting. So if I recognize the person to speak, if they want to speak or make comment, comments are only to be about items not on the agenda. Members of the public are asked to identify themselves and state their affiliation, if any. There will be a 3-minute period allocated to each speaker, and we will accept comments and note questions, but the work group is not permitted to address the issues or questions during this meeting due to open meeting law requirements about items not shown on an agenda. Okay, thank you for that, listening to that wonderful script. The next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda, which was on the meeting notice, and it was also sent out to you prior to that. So is there any question about the agenda, or can we get a motion to approve it?
I move we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Leslie. Any second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Michael. I'll read down the ayes or noes here. Leslie Forbes,
Aye.
Peter Haffenreffer,
Aye.
JP Hernandez.
Aye.
Thank you, JP. Bruce Mandel is aye. Michael Maynard,
Aye.
Lars Soderberg,
Aye.
Joseph Topham,
Aye.
Kitty.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. The agenda is approved. We'll move on. I just want to make a note at this point in time that when we sent out the copy of the notice of meeting, the members of the work group also received a draft copy of the minutes of the February meeting, a draft copy of the current updated Chapter 7 for use in this meeting, and a list of topics suggested to be included in Chapter 7. And if there's any question where these lists of what items should be included in the various chapters of the area plan, I want to clear that up. Back in year 2000, there was a meeting which I did not attend, wasn't on the committee then, on October 13th, 2020 with Andrew Vorse, in which he laid out the format and the requirements and made some suggestions. And then in 2021, there was a compilation of volunteers for each chapter. And at that point, they sent out the elements that should be included in those elements. And it was developed over a course of a couple of years with some surveys. We did 3 surveys. There were meetings at the annual MCA meeting where we collected input from the community, but that's the basis for where the elements are coming from. And they're just kind of a shopping list and a guide. Okay, next item is, are there any public comments for items not included in this agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. The next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the prior meeting, which was the February meeting, because we didn't have a March meeting. So I think I sent you all a copy of those minutes. Does anybody have any comments or suggestions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to take a vote on whether we should approve the agenda, and I'm going to run down the list here. Leslie Forbes?
Actually, I had one thing to say on those minutes.
Thank
I
you.
misspelled Sarah's first name and had her last name wrong. So her name is Sarah Hendrickson, and that's the way it will read in the corrected minutes. And then the other thing is, I was not at the February meeting, and so I put these minutes together from the AI transcript with the help of Bruce.
And that is so noted at the end of the minutes.
It is.
Page 2.
But I wanted to call people's attention to that.
Well, thank you very much for doing that. And Sarah, we're sorry to misspell your name. We'll try to do better. There's an item on the minutes I just want to address really quickly, and it's the discussion of Chapter 3 housing, which Michael Maynard led very capably. And for that discussion about the draft Chapter 3, we asked for thoughts and suggestions, feedback for issues such as short-term rentals, affordable housing, workforce housing, dormitories versus employee housing, density goals, and specifically density if the sewer is extended and things of that nature. I have not gotten any feedback or much traction on this, so I'm not sure Michael has either. But if you have any ideas, please send them to me so I can get them to Michael and his sub-work group so that we can update that chapter draft. Thank you.
Let me just make a note on that as well, Bruce, if you don't mind.
Please.
After that meeting, I reached out to a gentleman by the name of Mark Bobrowski, who is an experienced zoning lawyer. We had several discussions with him when we were preparing the surveys about the possible role of some new or revised zoning that would have an impact both on land use and housing. And he indicated that he would be interested in working with us. Subsequently, he had to take a leave of absence. He was about to have a rotator cuff surgery, which he did. And I think his recovery was slow. And then when I contacted him afterward, he indicated he's planning to retire at the end of June, and he was debating whether to take on this project or not. And with some effort, I think I persuaded him to do that. And he has a colleague who's sort of an understudy to him at his law firm, who would team with him to make the burden acceptable. Then he went on vacation. He's back, and I'm trying to chase him down to get a specific answer. If he answers yes, as I hope and expect he will, um, what we'll end up doing is organizing a call with our committee or subcommittee with him to talk about some of the issues and how zoning could impact, to have him get our input and then to get some feedback, which would subsequently lead to a proposal. And the proposal would obviously entail funding. And that would have to go to the MCA to see if the MCA would fund it, and then we can launch. So we're kind of in hold right now until I get some answers with him and get him re-engaged. It's been very frustrating, but he brings a lot of relevant experience. As some of you may recall who talked to him when we were working on the surveys, he crafted zoning dealing with density issues in Newburyport, Mass. And Newbury, Mass., which was successfully put into place a few years back. So that's just an update for you that we're not asleep, but I am somewhat frustrated in getting him into the cage here, or the tent, I should say, to try to advance this. So
Okay,
that's just a bulletin for all of you, or
thank you for that
elucidation.
Thank you for that update, Michael. Quick comment, please. I got my back of my hand slapped earlier in the week. When communicating or writing emails or whatever, please do not use the word committee. We intentionally are a work group, and we got permission to break into sub work groups, not committees. If we're designated as a committee, the open meeting law kicks in big time, and anytime the sub work group has a meeting, we'd have to post it publicly 2 days before. So let's keep the language and the written comments to either work group or sub work group. Thank you. I'd like to now turn the meeting over to Peter.
We need to
Who-
approve the minutes. We need to approve the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss that?
I interrupted you when you started.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You did, Leslie. Okay. Just let me know if you approve the minutes. Leslie,
Yes,
Peter,
Here,
JP.
yes.
Approved,
JP.
yep.
You're good, JP. Thanks. Crew's okay. Michael,
Yes,
Lars Soderberg.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Topham
Aye.
and Kitty.
Abstain. I was not at the meeting.
Thank you. So the meetings are, the minutes are approved and can now be sent to be posted. Okay, now I'd like to turn the meeting over to Peter, who I want to let you know has done an incredible amount of work. And it's very frustrating dealing with his small sub work group and trying to coordinate the comments that people are making. But I've sent you a copy of the latest version of that draft. It's dated April 4th. And the first page is really just comments, but Peter, you got the ball.
Okay. I think I was back and forth with Bruce a lot about what we want to try to accomplish. And there are two ways of doing it. One is to really conclude some things with this full work group. The other way would be to cover some high-level issues with the full work group and then call a sub work group together on a Zoom to really nail down the specifics. And it is probably going to be the latter. I just don't know that we have time to get through everything. But having said that, there are a number of things. I thought we were pretty well down the road of having all the content that we wanted, and Bruce added some topics that either we covered slightly or not at all. And so we need to kind of integrate some more concepts into the chapter 7. So the goal is to finish it up. And I think really the only way to do it is to kind of go through it point by point, where there are no comments at all. Again, read through it quickly if you have it in front of you. If you read it before, raise the issues that you want to raise, and then we'll try to, again, get as much high-level contribution as we can. I think what is likely to be helpful is if there are folks that are not in the sub-work group that are on the call, is that you call out like the why. Why is this in this chapter? Because there's a little bit, sometimes you get too close to it and someone makes a point about something probably doesn't need to be in there, and then it becomes obvious that we've just thrown additional stuff in there that we don't need to. So with that said, I think the best way to do this, because I think it was in the, now Bruce, I can't remember because I've edited the document that you've already, that you sent out. You had listed about 15 or 16 items, some of which are already in there, but I don't know that they were in the chapter itself. So we may have to kind of go back and forth on this. But I think probably the right way to do this is just start with what's in the chapter, ask for comments, summarize what we're trying to say in the subheading, and then move forward. Fair? That makes sense?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Pete, it's a good idea, Peter. And when Peter refers to the 15 items, it's that chapter 7 list of items that we developed from the meeting with Andrew Vorse and the surveys and the meetings with the public. I sent that out to you. And it's suggestions about topics, and that's what Peter is referring to.
There were some high-level comments that sort of applied to the entirety of the document. JP had made a few. They were in the document that you read. He called them global points. The first one, the important one, was where he said, where possible, we should attribute what the data and evidence that we're using. The real and there are two types of data. One is just raw data about a topic, and the other is Madaket behind this. And the only way we have information on that is through the surveys. Bruce has raised the specter of another survey, which may or may not be necessary, but where not so much in this chapter, but in the other chapter that I worked on, wherever I could, I threw in the data that we had. 85% of residents surveyed agree with this wholeheartedly, or whatever it might be. So there may be some need to go back to the surveys to flesh out how enthusiastic the Madaket residents that responded are to these topics. So JP's point was, if the survey is the only point of reference, then there may be some other data that we need to dig up to support our points. And the answer is great. We just may not have data for everything that we're contemplating putting into the chapter. JP, is that a fair summary of what you were trying to say in your very first point that when you edited the document?
Yeah, I think that's well stated.
Okay. And Bruce's response was, I will try to review the several surveys to cull chapter 7 items. So as we did in chapter 5, he'll try to find stuff that supports our positions in 7. This chapter 7 is services and facilities. And JP made another point, like, in service of what? Now, he made that point before I went back to some original documents and pulled out a little bit of a definition of what this chapter was all about. JP, so my question to you is, does that little bit of descriptive text help you, or do you still feel that we need to more closely define in service of what?
I'll be honest, I did look at this before the meeting, but on this particular one, I don't think I came to a strong view one way or the other. So let me,
okay.
Sorry to do it, but let me punt till we get into the subgroup, or however we do that.
That would be great. And I think very specific, your questions weren't some were very specific, but some were pretty high level. I responded to as many as I could. So if you can kind of figure out what my, this may be tricky given there are 5 of us commenting on this. If you could figure out what Bruce and my responses were to your high level comments and see if that answers them, that would be helpful once we get into the smaller group.
I can absolutely do that. Yep.
The other issue is that some of these are defined in chapter 1 or defined or covered in chapter 1, which is kind of a global chapter, which and applies to all the subsequent chapters 2 through 9 or whatever, however many there are. Okay, so diving in, and this is where Bruce started right at the very top. He started to add some comments about things that could additionally be added to this. But I still think I want to go with what I said first and just dive into where the document was before the edits and then go back to the comments. The very first element is the purpose of the element. Then we get into some specifics of, and again, services and facilities, beaches and water access points. That is the first sort of topic, and the language was that the work group supports the provision of seasonal portable toilet facilities, bicycle racks, trash receptacles, and where applicable, access ramps. And I just realized this is getting into the details, and this is probably not what we want to do. So trying to find the line between what we should cover here and what we should cover in the smaller group.
Hey, Peter, or
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, or I don't know how we do this, but can I make a comment?
please.
I've read this a couple times, and I know it's here, but have you defined the definition of services and facilities and what we want to cover here? Jumping ahead of ourselves, as an example, you go through the wave bus, which I've been covering in parking and transportation. So do we have exactly what we want to cover in services and facilities here? Because I mean, all these chapters overlap, but I think we don't want to duplicate efforts over and over again. So just a comment.
Where I thought there might be overlap, I commented that fact, and that would have to be a conversation with whoever's running that chapter to know, okay, who gets this one.
Okay.
I've tried. There's a lot in this chapter. There are a lot in each of the chapters, but I was trying to not grab stuff that could better be covered in like transportation. There's a number of issues about roadways in this, and I keep saying I think that may be a transportation topic, but I think that's where I need probably Bruce to weigh in, who has a better view of all the chapters. The definition sort of prompted by JP's comment was the services and facilities element of the Madaket Area Plan identifies and analyzes existing and forecasted needs, ensuring the adequate provision of essential services and facilities in Madaket that are used by the public, such as, and then we start going into what they are. So that was the opening salvo of like what we're going to cover. So public facilities, this includes things like fire stations, public docking facilities, lifeguard stations, and other public buildings. And then Bruce weighed in on some things that probably should be covered, which I just, again, if people have looked at it and say, no, don't cover that in this chapter because it's covered in another one, please speak up. Landfill could be covered in probably 3 different chapters. So there are probably some sections that are specific to the services that the landfill provides rather than sort of ecological issues. Bruce, are you saying hello?
Yes, thank you. My thought is that because there's so much overlap amongst the chapters, that it wouldn't hurt to mention an item like landfill, like you just mentioned, or the bus that Lars mentioned, and just say that this is one of the services provided by the town, and it's covered in more detail in chapter 8, transportation.
Yeah. I think I did that in one case, but I can use that as a sort of a template for wherever there is other overlap where I think we're probably the junior partner in it. Public facilities, I mean, this would be a case of people saying, hey, you know, you're forgetting about such and such. So again, the public facilities were docking facilities, lifeguard stations, public buildings. In Madaket, you know, the fire station is, I guess, a public building. I don't know that there are a lot of other public buildings in Madaket, none that I could think of. And whether the, you know, the ramps are, the boat ramps are, they are certainly public. They can certainly be included in this. Landfill, fire and emergency vehicle accessibility was a Bruce comment.
Mhm.
And that kind of gets into issues of roadways, because one of his comments is about making sure that brush cutting occurs so that the emergency vehicles can get through. Well, is that services and facilities, or is that, not sure, it's transportation, but it has to do with private roads that the trucks need to get through. PFAS, broadly speaking, I don't know if that falls under services and facilities, though there, you know, there's lots of PFAS issues at the landfill. That was one of those where I scratched my head and said, I don't know, I'm not sure I could find a better chapter for it, but I'm not sure that that falls directly into ours, unless, Bruce, you see a way to sneak a discussion of PFAS into one of these subheadings.
I think it's a good thing to mention from the point of view of services and PFAS. I think it's just sufficient to mention that the town is working on this, and there is a mechanism the town has for testing your wells or for you to self-test. And it could be covered in wherever we're going to talk about the Board of Health or the landfill. It could just be a sentence that advises someone that's looking at this area plan with the intent of buying a property or renting in Madaket. They know that, hey, if I want to test my water, there's a service available.
Yep. Okay, fair. Dredging plans was another addition. The history and the maintenance of Madaket Ditch. Bruce, did you mean the harbor dredging, the channel dredging, or did you mean digging out the you know, the ditch system throughout Madaket for mosquito control?
There is a dredging plan for the Madaket Ditch in the Natural Resources Department. They've been, I mean, they studied it, they had pricing, they had bids. They've been reluctant to do it. And the discussion was, if we dredge it, that's going to clear up the flow between the harbor, Hither Creek, and Long Pond. And the concern is, if one of those waterways is deemed to be contaminated, or too much nitrogen or too much other substance, a more free-flowing ditch would allow that substance to flow back and forth. I think it's sufficient just to let the people know that there is a dredging plan for the various waterways to improve water flow, and they are available in the various town departments. And that's it. It's just letting the people know that this is a subject that we know about, it's studied, and if you want more information, you could dig it out.
Okay.
So some of these things, Peter, you've taken a position, you've asked that the Madaket work group take a position, like we support, where did I read that? And so are we just alerting people to some things like PFAS or the dredging, or are we taking a position? Where do you take a position, and where do you just, you know, put up a bulletin board?
Well, the stuff that I had done, hang on one sec, Bruce, the stuff that I had done initially was, as I understood it, we want to take a position on these items to let the town know this is where we stay. Some of
Yeah.
the items that Bruce has added in are a little bit more like information, bulletin board stuff. I don't know whether that's appropriate or not. I imagine it is. I don't think, Bruce wouldn't have thrown it in there otherwise, but I don't know that, taking a position on dredging the Madaket ditch, that's way outside my knowledge base.
The intent is, I was trying to dovetail this with the work that the MCA did back in 2011 when they got involved with the Community Foundation. They produced a document that's very similar to an area plan. And in that, they set forth objectives or policies. And I tried to dovetail my thoughts with that. And the intent is I'll give you an example. Your number 3, the work group encourages the continued seasonal maintenance of lifeguard stand and lifeguard services in Madaket Beach. That's something that we all probably agree on, that we encourage that to continue and build up. But when it comes to something like the PFAS issue, I think it's sufficient to not take a position on it, other than the fact that we're just letting you know that it might be an issue, and it might be a bad thing to put in an area plan, but it was something to stimulate some conversation here. Do you want to put something like this out there as a part of an advisory, or is it something that we just let the users of the area plan don't even delve into it? It's up to us. It's not on that list of what he called 15 items, but it was just something to think about. And if it's too controversial to come to a decision or to a guidance, I think it could be omitted, just the fact that we're talking about a service and a facility as a landfill. And there are some current concerns about the future use and things of that nature that we could discuss or put in some of the other chapters. Does that make sense to anybody? Michael?
Yeah, I think this issue that it's complex in the sense that there is so much overlap, but also I think we have to be cautious about being realistic in identifying. I think we need to identify the key areas which the residents have concern about and where we're going. But I think a lot of it's aspirational in the sense that whatever the topic might be, call it the landfill. It's very technical. We don't have the resources or the political power to make anything specific happen other than to address aspirationally a general direction in which we're concerned about. For example, landfill, and I'm not suggesting this is the language, but it is something that has an impact on us in terms of odor, air, possible fire, groundwater and long pond pollution, all kinds of other things. I think it is relevant and should be talked about, but again, in a general way to say, the residents support, and again, I don't want to put the language in, but it is something I think we're all concerned that we don't want the way it's run and developed to negatively impact our lives out in Madaket as much as can be done. And, the same could be true about PFAS or any number of other things. I think some of the issues are so detailed or minute that I don't think it makes sense to raise them. But where there are things that have some impact, some of them we may, I think, just talk directionally what we'd like to see happen. And certainly things like density, everyone understands that. One thing I would comment on in the language at the very front end, I'm trying to pull it back up again. I just lost it. Hang on one sec. In the very beginning, public facilities, it comes up later, but I think one of the things I would add it, Public facilities, this includes things like fire stations, public docking facilities, lifeguard stations, and I would say certainly public parking. That may be the most contentious issue that Madaket has to deal with. I don't know that we have to come forward in detail and recommend solutions, but out at the end of Madaket Road, that's probably the noise and parking are the two biggest issues for the people who
Mhm.
live around there.
Well, it's a good point, Michael, and I don't think we have to come up with solutions. We have to come up with,
Right.
we support a solution being developed that's compatible. For example, if you have the document, go to page 5 and Peter's number 8, that's where I mentioned PFAS. It doesn't have to go in there where he is talking about water quality and things of that nature. He makes a very competent statement about what the work group, the big work group, the area plan supports. And I just threw that in there as a question, actually, of you want to tie this in? And the answer sounds like, no, it's not important to tie it in at this place.
I mean, you could always just work the word PFAS or the acronym PFAS into the language just so it's out there. Because certainly that is from a water quality issue. That's obviously one of the big issues with PFAS is that it's in our water. So there are ways to edit the language just to include some of the topics that we're kind of adding in to be considered. It also may be that in chapter 1, there may be a way to identify issues that don't easily fall into some of these other categories and just say, here are some other things we're concerned about without getting into a lot of detail, just so we're kind of on record. That may or may not be a good idea because it may just be an open issue that will get ignored if it's not tucked properly into one of these chapters. I'm not sure.
Well,
Hey-
you're getting into the next item on the agenda, which I have a feeling we only got 20 minutes left.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, real quick, I think Joe's been patiently raising his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh.
I can't see anyone. So sorry, Joe.
That's all right. No,
Oh,
it's fine. You guys are riffing back and forth. I want to go. I think the other thing we have to remember is that the survey and the polling that we've done, we may not agree with something, but if that is the majority, I think we have to kind of weigh in that as well. I'm not saying we're not swinging it one way or another, but we just got to keep that in mind, as we're working, what was the majority of the neighborhood? And I think STRs, if we're going to get to that conversation, for or against, I think we really just need to make sure because this is going to go into the master plan. This is going to go to the planning board and the NPC. And these are all documents that we're going to use and try and have the majority of the people of Madaket, their vote, their voice. And so I just want to make sure everyone's just kind of keeping that in mind. I think we're doing a really good job. I just want to bring that out publicly. Thanks.
Thanks,
What,
Joe.
one,
Lars?
one last thing on that, Mr. Chairman. I think what this is leading us to, because you're right, we're eventually going to run out of time here, is, and I'll be happy to jump in with anyone. I'm not sure how we do it with the public meeting laws, but we've got to get these chapters, the topics in each chapter so that we're not both, Peter, you and I are writing the same, on different topics at the same time. And we're having a hard enough time finishing this. As an example, Michael, you're right. Parking at the end of the beach is a mess, but that's what I've been writing in parking and transportation. So I don't want us double dipping and all. This is hard enough to finish. So I don't have the answer how we do that, but I don't know if we can get the 110 little topics in all 9 chapters and just sit there somehow or other and say, all right, this one belongs here. This one belongs there. PFAS belongs there. I think we have a water chapter. So it seems to me the topic water would be the place to put PFAS. That's just me. But anyway, I think we need to really get a little organized on the so that we're not double dipping here. Go ahead, Michael.
It's a good
Lars, to
point,
follow up on that
Michael.
point, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I think one way to do it may be if the chapter, the chapter sub work groups, those that have overlaps,
Yeah.
simply agree, okay, chapter 4 is going to take this and chapter 7 won't, but chapter 7 will identify it and simply say, this is being handled. So if someone's
Yep.
working through this thing, it would save a lot of unnecessary work where two different people are trying to tackle it. Just agree up front. You know, if we had a list of the topics and say, okay, it's going to be this chapter. Someone
Yep.
else will want to mention it.
I-
But if we all agree at the outset, it'll make I think the work a lot easier.
I agree, Michael. That's a good point. And as we're discussing this, I don't see anything wrong, for example, with Peter listing all these items. But now that he did, and we have the opportunity to review it, if I'm working on a chapter and I'm going to cover one of the things that he's just mentioned, but I'm going to pick it up in detail, we could just all say to Peter, hey, you just mentioned it. I'm going to expand on it in my chapter. But he doesn't know that yet.
Right.
Well, that's what we need to agree on now, is almost at the outset, so that there's not a lot of unnecessary duplication.
Could we short circuit this by each of you? Lars, you say parking may overlap with X, but I'm going to take it, and just send that out. And Peter, you decide
Yeah.
that you're not doing PFAS. You'll mention it, but you're not doing it. Somebody else needs to pick it up, rather than us trying to come up with a master list where there's overlaps, because that's going to be their 3 meetings.
One of the things that makes this hard is that when you have all the edits in this document, plus all the typing I'm doing now to kind of keep track on what we're saying, I think, you know, we can save it without all the edits. It's a much smaller document when you do that. And then just highlight the areas, because I have at the very top of my document, I've copied in the names of all the chapters. So I can look at it and go, oh, right, circulation and transportation. And then highlight on my document, send it to Lars and say, who, you know, let's draw straws on these 3 items where we overlap, and do the same thing with, as best I can see, you know, who I might overlap with on other items. That may be a way of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's
That's
comments,
a
yeah.
way. Yeah.
Lars,
Leslie,
you
that's
wanna
correct,
say
and
something?
Peter, that's correct. So
Yeah.
I'll start trying to do that a little more efficiently with the things I'm tackling.
So
Thank you.
once we get past the sub work group stage, where we've refined, where we've decided what we're going to include in this big picture, that's the point at which I can save the document without all the additional stuff. And really it'll be, you know, then it's like a 4-page document, not a 10-page document. And then I think it'll be a lot easier for me to like forward it to you, Lars, and say, highlight the sections that might overlap and say, let's just chat about these. And I think that's not content. I don't think we run afoul of the public meeting laws, because we're just deciding who's going to cover what.
I think this is a valuable conversation. You know, in January, I think I sent to everyone a document basically listing the chapter volunteers and topic examples. I think it went out on the 8th of January. And
Yep.
I don't think I mean, this idea is good, but just take one of the chapters, read down it and say, I'm covering this in chapter 8. It doesn't belong in chapter 1. I think it's that simple, just to, you know, kind of cull down that list, so to speak, that was developed by meeting with Andrew and subsequently with MCA, and just pick through that and say, oh, this doesn't belong in chapter 7. It belongs in chapter 8. I think that's the easiest way, or a helpful way. If you want, I'll resend that document to everyone. Is that okay, or bad idea?
No, I think that's always useful. Again, I have the problem of looking at a 10-page highly edited document. I need to get this thing that we're looking at, chapter 7, into a simpler format. Otherwise,
It makes your head
overload.
spin.
Yeah. Yeah. Given that we're running out of time, can I try to get through the rest of this just high level to make sure that we don't have any other comments on this? Okay. And what I will do before we go to the smaller group is try to incorporate Bruce's comments into the sections where they might belong. When we get into the smaller group, then we can discard them or move them into another chapter or whatever is appropriate. So I won't spend a ton of time on his comments now, just because I think we are running out of time. So we were in the world of public facilities. I've added public parking. We may or may not stay. The landfill is a discussion point that needs to be in here in some form. Fire emergency vehicles, probably brush cutting, maybe maintenance of private road owners' responsibility. Again, I don't know if things like that fall into circulation and transportation or land use, but again, these are things we can figure out later on. Dredging plans, we talked a little bit about commercial town periods, blah, blah, blah. Okay, utilities, this includes planning for the provisions of water, sewer, electricity, gas, and other essential utilities. Recreation planning for beaches, parks, recreational facilities, and open spaces. Bruce says coordinate with Ethan on chapter 6, which is open space and recreation. Okay.
Right.
Sorry, flipping down. So many edits, I can't even find where I was. Okay.
On page 7, I think. You're on page
Yeah,
7.
my pages don't line up anymore. Beaches and other access points.
You had utilities. The next item was noise pollution.
Public facilities. Okay, utilities, recreation, purpose of the element. Yeah, beaches and water access points. Madaket area group supports provision of seasonal. Oh, did we cover this?
Yeah.
Never mind. Okay, so now then we get the next topic is sewering, which is its own topic, of course. This was a place where JP commented on the issue of blur. So this was and he's probably right. The issue, there are two issues. One is, do we want sewering and why? And is the why that will help with density, or we'll have to deal with the fact that density could go up. Or are we just talking about sewering as a health and sanitation issue? And those, those lines are a little bit blurred. This then also gets into the stuff that in terms of zoning, which I don't think is a topic for this chapter. I think my point to JP was that they kind of go hand in hand. If we knew that the zoning laws would be changed, if we could absolutely be assured that the zoning laws would change, that just takes away one reason why we might not necessarily feel compelled to support the sewering, because then we're not going to have density isn't going to be increased. But you can't assume that. We can't assume that we're going to make those changes, and therefore I think we have to have a position on sewering sort of regardless of what changes happen in zoning. At least that's my opinion. Yeah. And again, this is probably flops over into a couple other chapters, but I think we have to lay it out that way. Now, JP, again, I know you said you didn't have a lot of time to go back and read the comments to your comments. But was this one where you have an opinion? Do you see the position that Bruce and I were? I think Bruce was also on this, taking relative to your point.
Yeah, I mean, this one just seems like one we've got to work through in our subgroup or whatever we're calling it. With we've only got the 9 minutes left, and there's other stuff to do here.
Yeah.
I can certainly see both sides on this, but again, would sort of require some good back and forth to see where we want to net out on it.
Because the lead was the area work group does not support the construction of a sewer facility in Madaket. And of course, the answer is that for this reason, because it might lead to greater density. Again, so I think you're right. Let's leave that for a smaller work group to hash through.
Peter.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with a chapter or a sub work group saying, identifying, hey, This is an issue that we recommend be further studied by a Madaket specific committee or work group. Don't try to solve the problem. Say it's an issue. That's part of what the area plan is to do. It's to bring up issues that are concerned to the community. And we don't have an answer, but we recommend that this be looked into further. And when I say a Madaket specific group to study it, we're not interested in solving the density issues, for example, in Sconset. We're just worried about the 11 neighborhoods in Madaket.
Yep,
Any
fair.
thoughts on that?
And I do a sewer facility or a sewer line, a sewer connection. A facility means to me, something that's treating effluent, wastewater
Yeah.
treatment plant.
Well,
As-
that's a good point because, before the FAA land was sold, the theory was to put a tertiary treatment plant on the west end in there and to feed the west end communities to that rather than run it all the way to Surfside.
Yep.
So that would be a discussion on a facility relative to sewering.
You
'Cause,
could look at
well,
sewering
recently
as
we've been
simply
talk-
it's a service. It's a utility, it's infrastructure, but it's a service.
Yeah.
And do
Sewer
people want it?
service.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting. It's very clear from all the surveys that people do not want to see an increase in density. We know that sewer would facilitate that. I think, but it was interesting when you looked at the sewer, the specific on sewering in the survey, it was close to 50-50. And I think that's partly because a lot of people didn't think about the secondary and tertiary impacts of what would happen with sewer. They just thought, wow, it'd be great. I don't have to have a septic system anymore. So, I mean, we could advocate a position if in a draft, for example, because ultimately this thing can't go to the town until I think it's been put out to the residents and looking for another vote or something. But you can lay out all the reasons why if we took the position based on that we did not support sewering, it's expense, it's the fact that there's a standing investment in all the IA systems today.
Yeah.
And it has impact on density. If you were to state a position as to what the group feels the residents want with the supporting documentation, a couple paragraphs and all the reasons why, you put it out there, I suspect most people would support it. But we don't know till we get there.
And I
So-
think, sorry, Leslie, but I think one of the other things why people voted yes was the clean harbors, clean ponds and stuff. They were thinking like, oh, let's get the affluents, like get rid of this, gray water, et cetera, out into a treatment plant. So I think that was something, but they didn't realize that if they did that, then once that happens, there is, the density, the room count, it's all of a sudden expanding, almost like the Wild West. It's wide open, it's open. So I think that's where someone didn't realize that that would be the other, the negative to that positive, if you will.
Well,
So, Peter, you could one little fix would be support the construction of a sewer service to Madaket, and then you're not caught up in whether it's a facility or whether it's a pipe.
we're identifying things that really weren't covered in our community discussions or perhaps in the survey. And I think it might be helpful if we identify those issues because we actually have to have data or survey feed it back in order to make a point, according to the planning director or the former planning director. I wouldn't oppose making a list of those items that we think we need more data on. And I would get back into the survey business and create a draft overview on it and send it out to you guys to say, do you want to use this or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should
I
we wait
think
until we have?
avoided
I don't know.
some of that before because we were concerned about, the instructions do not do anything that might be perceived as leading the answer. And so we kept the questions pretty simple and straightforward.
True.
Now,
Thank
my
you,
2 cents
Lars.
on that is I think we have a lot of survey data. We don't have every question answered.
Right.
But if we get into another survey, we're going to be here till the next century.
Okay, I withdraw the offer.
No, I don't. It's not. I just think we have to go with what we have. Even if sewer was 50-50, we know there's reasons for that, and we don't have to skewer the data, but we can use that, you know,
Well,
half the population wants, I don't know how we phrase it, but I think we have plenty of data, in my opinion. It doesn't mean there aren't things we don't know, but if we start heading down that path, I'm nervous we'll never get
here's
going.
I have an administrative question, and maybe this is for Joe, but is when we at some point have a final draft, and it's from our perspective, the work group, it's ready to go to the town. Are we expected to, or are we allowed to then put it out for a vote among the 600 residents again, like we do with the surveys, to get people's feedback? Or is this just, I would think you would want that to happen so that we could say, yeah, we did the surveys, we know how people voted on the survey questions. Here's a final document. It reflects our best thinking. But something like sewer, for example, might be very controversial. I don't know.
Uh,
What's the
Sorry.
town expectation of, how does one certify it's ready to be submitted to the town?
So, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I feel that once we're done in a draft form, I do think it should go out to the 600 people because we might have missed something. There might have been a question that, had a very good point, but there may be another something we don't see. And I think we take the comments, whether they go to, Bruce, and we then all look at them and say, well, we missed this, or that's a good point, or that majority of people, that's really singular. But this is the majority of the comments. I think that we should kind of tweak it a little bit. I think it should go out there. I'm not sure if that's really a question. I can ask Leslie if that's what you'd like us to do. I think that would be kind of a polite way to kind of make sure everyone's involved and everyone's got it, their, seeing what's happening and before we go forward, and then give it up to the Barrett Group. But I definitely think it should go to Madaket, then Plus Department, and then Barrett Group personally.
Lars, you want a
Well,
question?
I'd be surprised if the other area plans are doing that. But it'd be interesting to know. Is Sconset gonna then, I'd be very surprised if that hardworking group is then gonna show it to the community and get another set of feedback. I'd be interested in knowing if, I think we're empowered to do the best we can to come up with an area plan. And we have pretty good survey data. Again, if we put this back out to the community, I don't know if they'll know what we're talking about, really. And people are going to have opinions all over the place. So
Well,
yeah,
Lars,
I
that's a-
think we can explore it, as in, is it a good idea or a bad idea? But I think we're empowered to do the best we can to come up with an area plan, finalize it, work really hard, continue working hard on it. And where I sit today would be, I think it'd be a unnecessary step to then again show it to the community and get their feedback. I don't know. I think that'd be unnecessary, but that's just my opinion. Others can have different ones, or if every other group is doing it, fine. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Thank you, Lars. We're kind of running up against our 1 hour Zoom limit before they turn us off. One way to do that is, instead of sending it out and looking for feedback, is we could have a session, for example, at a Madaket Conservation Association annual meeting where the public would attend and say, this is the draft. If you have any comments, bring them to this meeting, and that's it. My feeling is that it would accomplish getting the feedback of the people who are interested. And Lars, to your question, I think we're the final area plan to be submitted. I think the town, so to speak, area plan is almost finished.
Yes.
So we're the last one.
Yeah. And so the other thing, what I was saying after I kind of heard myself talk, is maybe like when we submit it to the Plus Department, I think it should go out to the Madaket people, and I think they should kind of weigh in. But um, I just think that that would be the wise way to go, and just make sure everyone sees this. The moment we give it to, say, Leslie Snell, it is a public document, so anyone can go get it. But I think that if you just took it to the Madaket Conservation Group, I think you're really talking about a small group. And I do think there should be a link that should go out to everyone that's been, the 600 people plus that weigh in on this, or just have the document and then they see what happens. So I think that would be the wise thing to do. That's kind of my opinion. So
Oh, thank you. You know, we really do have to watch out for the open meeting law consequences and how to squirrel around those. So I think the last thing we want to do is get it to the planning department. We want to accomplish any kind of review, massaging, whatever it is prior to that. And I think we can work out a way to do that. And Lars's comments about we have an awful lot of information in the surveys kind of ties back to the first paragraph, second paragraph on page, where I'm going to try to go through the surveys and cull out the information that is specific to, for example, the subjects in the chapter 7 or chapter 8, whatever it is. I think that would help. I think we're at a good stopping point now, and I think, Peter, I want to thank you so much for all the hours you put into this so far. I'd like to pick up chapter 7 on the next agenda and to get through it and finish it. At least our discussion of this.
Bruce,
It'll give-
are you, do you think we can go to the small work group at this point? I mean, even though we didn't get to the bottom of this, if you sent a note out to everybody in the committee and said, please look at this and send you the comments,
Mhm.
give
I
that a
think
week,
that-
and then we go right to the smaller work group to kind of turn this into a more finished document where we make some of these decisions about what stays in and what does not.
Mhm.
I think that's
Lars?
going to move us ahead a little bit. I just don't know. We got into some discussion today that really had nothing to do with this specific document, right? It was more general discussion about how we want to move forward generally. And I just don't know the value of going through every item.
Mr. Chairman, just one comment on that, Peter. I
Yeah.
think we've decided, correct me if I'm wrong, it certainly at the February meeting, we talked about this, that the idea is for the small work groups to come up with a 99% done document.
Right.
Done. We're not going to look, at these comments today as an entire committee. The small work group is going to do the best they can to come up with a 99% finished chapter and then share it with the group, saying this is our finished product. Chime in now if you have any comments or it's done.
That's exactly right. The
Okay.
idea of the sub work groups was for them to work through their chapter and then come to us and say, hey, we've worked through this. This is what we feel like is a refined draft. Give us some feedback so we can finalize it.
Okay.
I think otherwise you have a very, very long process, too many iterations.
Yeah.
But the answer to your question, Peter, is yes. If you can work out your small sub work group and keep it, that's the term we're using, small. It's a sub work group for chapter 7.
Yeah.
If you have a personal Zoom account you want to use, or you want to ask Michael about perhaps using his, a Zoom account is free, by the way, if you just go and apply for it. But it's a personal one, and you got to keep the group small. But I think that's a good idea, and it doesn't pertain just to chapter 7. It pertains to all the chapter small sub work groups. Go for it. Let's get it done.
Then Bruce, let me ask you another question. Do you feel that the reason that you included it in today's agenda we've gotten to those issues before we dive into the small work group?
The reason I asked Michael to update on his product, chapter 3, and then I asked you to, is because from the information I'm getting from you folks is those 2 chapters, and Michael has a land use chapter, and you have another chapter 2 that you've worked on. They were the most advanced. I wanted the people in the entire area plan work group to look at them and say, you know what, we're on the right track. Let's move forward this way and that way. Wasn't
Okay.
looking at you guys to refine this. I was looking at you to analyze it, the progress we're making, and then, moving forward.
Okay, fair. Can I reach out to the small work group, or do you need to do that?
You can do that.
Okay,
Just make sure you don't make any decisions, don't make any, take any votes or anything like that. They're final. Just be very careful how you use it, but use the term sub-work group.
Procedural question. What's the expected date for the next meeting? Is it the second Friday of the month?
Yes, it's May 9th.
Unfortunately, I'm going to be in Europe from the 7th to the 19th. I will not be around for the 9th or the 16th.
Okay, we'll give you an excuse.
I will be in DC and then flying to Boston, grabbing both my daughters and bringing them home. So I will not be able to record.
Would you, as a group, like to have the next meeting in June, and this will give the sub-work groups a chance to get into gear? Second Friday
It
in
certainly
June?
would work for me because I'm going to be gone for almost 2 weeks. I'm not gonna, and it's all family, so I won't be working during that time.
Maybe Joe will be back by that time too. Okay, the second Friday in June is, oh, how lovely. It's Friday the 13th.
Oh, wonderful. Perfect.
So, what are
I
you
am
both-
away, but that I won't be around, but I won't be up, so that'll be okay.
Okay, we'll work around this, but do you feel like May is too soon to get into something? And we ought to wait till June?
What if we
Anyone?
did June 6th, Bruce?
The problem is I can't get a Zoom channel from town. This was the only slot they had for us. Now, if June 6th works, I could ask Maureen Coleman to see if she can squeeze us into a Zoom slot. The town has 3 or 4 Zoom channels. So,
I just realized that my business school reunions that weekend. My wife and I are hosting my section that night, the 13th. So
yes, you'll never
I would be
recover from
useless
that.
then as well.
You probably won't cover that in a week, but so would
Six
the
Maybe
works
shoot
for
the
me.
6th?
first Friday in June work for,
Yep.
First
Okay.
Friday in June is June 6th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Six,
But
exactly.
Bruce, isn't the issue whoever's chapter you want to cover? They're the ones that need to tell you that they'll be ready by the 6th.
Well, I'd like you to pick up where we're at here, perhaps on 5, and I could organize the agenda to be a more generic global thing.
Yeah, I think 5 is ready for this type of discussion.
Okay, so
And are you
that'll
going to be around on June 6th?
Yes, that's good. Okay. We'll do that. I'll send out a draft agenda ahead of time. Please comment back. So the next meeting is June 6th. If I can get Maureen to allocate this slot for us, and I'll let you know as soon as possible.
You know, Joe's got an inside track. You know, you got lots of time. I'm sure he can deliver.
The problem is that's the other side of the equation.
I have no more favors to give people.
The town is divided into 2 halves, administration and EPCDC, and administration is scheduling and we're under EPCDC. So anyway, I think it'd be time to accept a motion to adjourn and thank
So
everybody and
moved.
wish you a happy weekend.
So
Same
moved.
to you, Bruce.
All right, Michael, so moved. I'm gonna say Peter seconded it.
Yep.
All in favor, raise your hand. Have a good weekend. Thank you for attending, Sarah.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Have a good
Thanks,
weekend.
everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Be careful out there.